The jury went home after deliberating for a few hours yesterday in the Sham case against Donald Trump in Manhattan for allegedly manipulating business records and violating campaign law or something like that. Yeah, he executed a normal non-disclosure agreement during the 2016 campaign, and here we are. The judge in the case gave some very peculiar instructions to the panel and actually said they don't need to arrive at a unanimous decision. In fact, he will consider 4 votes in favor of any of the 3 charges as a guilty verdict. Ha! Stunning, to say the least. Here are the charges: violation of federal election law, falsification of business records, and tax violations. If they go 4-4-4, he'll consider that a unanimous decision. Ha! So I'm going to sort it out and have several experts weigh in on what this means and what it means that the jury didn't reach a quick verdict, if it means anything at all. Is that good or bad? Let's start with the surreal, all right? The judge, Juan Merchan, gives the most bizarre instruction saying the felony doesn't really matter. Just like facts don't really matter, just get Trump. Just get Trump. We've got some long bites here to explain it, so let's work through it. Let's start here. Go.
Well, let me ask you about the 3 choices. And one thing in particular that this judge said that these jurors could do. He just delivered what is being called really the pinnacle of all of this. He said that there is no need to agree on what has occurred. They can disagree on what the crime was among the 3 choices. Thus, this means that they could split 4-4-4, and the judge would still treat them unanimously. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, it's really outrageous because in a normal criminal case, every statutory crime has what we call elements of the offense. Like in a bank robbery case, it's, you have to rob, it's got to be a financial institution, you have to show intent. Those are the things the jury has to agree on unanimously that they were proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, what we're doing is taking the element that actually makes this a felony, because remember, falsification of records is normally a misdemeanor in New York. What makes it a felony is that you're concealing or committing another crime. And here the judge is telling them they don't have to agree about what the other crime is under circumstances where that not only is what makes this a felony, what makes it a 4-year potential prison penalty rather than a year or less, but it's also what gets us into the courtroom, because if this had been a misdemeanor, the time to bring this case would have lapsed in 2019. So the only reason they're still able to bring this case is because it's a felony, allegedly, and yet now the judge is saying, you don't have to agree on what the felony is.
Yeah, just spin the wheel. If you pick something on the wheel, that's going to be good enough for us. When the jury went home, President Trump emerged to savage the entire procedure and the entire process, as you can imagine. Why wouldn't he? He says there is no case here because there is no case here. Says he has already won. Here's part of what he said.
If we had a fair judge, this case would have been over a long time ago. But a lot of key witnesses were not called. Look at your list. Look at the players. And you know who I'm talking about. You can take 5 or 6 of them. Why didn't they call those witnesses? They didn't call them because they would have been on our side. And it's a shame. And in particular, one witness who's now suffering gravely because of what's happened, because of the viciousness of these thugs. The vicious people, what they've done to that person. And you know who I'm talking about. And they didn't call him as a witness. They didn't call anybody as a witness. And all these people they could have called and solved the problem. The other thing, the confusion is, nobody knows what the crime is, because there's no crime. Nobody knows what the crime is. The DA didn't name the crime.
Yeah, the jury can pick one of the 3. They don't have to be in agreement on all of them. Shocking development, to say the least. Of course, there's criminal intent required for all of them as well. And one of those, violation of federal election law, you can't prosecute that under state law, but that's what they're doing here. You see, they're hoping for a conviction on anything, so they can go out on the campaign trail and say he is a convicted felon. It will be thrown out, just a matter of time. I believe they should take this straight to the United States Supreme Court. I do. I think it should be an emergency request to the United States Supreme Court. This is so far afield. It's not a question of whether Judge Merchan jumped the shark, but how many times and how many sharks. And before I leave the experts, I want to have another take on the whole jury splitting 444, how it would be considered a unanimous jury. And remember, there are 2 lawyers on this panel. And there is simply nothing in American jurisprudence that would allow for such a bizarre set of instructions. There's not anything. There's nothing that any of this can possibly occur. Listen to this.
In a normal criminal case, every statutory crime has what we call elements of the offense. Like in a bank robbery case, it's, you have to rob. It's got to be a financial institution. You have to show intent. Those are the things the jury has to agree on unanimously that they were proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, what we're doing is taking the element that actually makes this a felony, because remember, falsification of records is normally a misdemeanor in New York. What makes it a felony is that you're concealing or committing another crime. And here the judge is telling them they don't have to agree about what the other crime is under circumstances where that not only is what makes this a felony, what makes it a 4-year potential prison penalty rather than a year or less, but it's also what gets us into the courtroom, because if this had been a misdemeanor, the time to bring this case would have lapsed in 2019.
Yeah, repeating myself there, but it's important to understand those points. You can't have a conviction when the jury doesn't agree unanimously on the underlying crime. Obviously, this is a place where the fix was in. From day one. From day one, the fix was in. We have a lot of other debates about this, both inside and outside the courtroom, all over America, too, as people weigh in on what they have seen, what they expect when the jury comes back. And these conversations are often emotional, as you certainly know by now. Emotional conversations, and we're going to get to some of that. What do you think? Go to SteveGruber.com. You send me an email and say, Groobs, this is what I think is happening here. Here's how I think it's going to play out. Will it be a hung jury? A conviction? Does anybody think there's going to be an acquittal here? Go to SteveGruber.com. Drop me a note. I'm curious to know your thoughts, America. This is The Steve Gruber Show.